7 years ago in 2019, one of the most infamous champions made their way onto Summoner's Rift, Silas, who was the first AP assassin to come out in a while. The latter half of the 2010s bore witness to a period of cavalier design philosophy, where the champion developers saw fit to add a crazy gimmick to every new release they could think of, including and especially Silas, whose entire premise was that he could steal the ultimates of other champions and use them as his own. A great deal of time has passed and we haven't seen a new AP assassin since then. That's about to change with the newest addition to the game, Locke, looking like he was plucked straight from Jujutsu Kaisen. I can't be the only one, right? Come on. Anyway, following the same line of work as Vayne in that they're both demon hunters, Locke is not only slated to be the first AP assassin in over 7 years, but the first true AP assassin since Akali CGU over 8.5 years ago. Not counting reworks, he'll be the first one in over a decade, as a no hybrid, 100% assassin. Now, considering assassins have a track record for being among the most annoying champions in the game to fight, and given that he shares the same occupation as Vayne, and Vayne's not the most enjoyable champion for most people, a lot of possible red flags might grace us with their presence. So without further ado, we're going to find out if they're actually substantiated. I'm going to be taking a look at his abilities and gameplay to find out how well designed he is, and whether or not he'll be a chill champion for the next 200 years. The reason AP assassins are exceedingly rare in this game is because of the nature of items. For AD assassins, what keeps them distinct from other physical damage dealers is that they effectively have their own selection of equipment, with the attribute characterizing the class being lethality or armor penetration. This allows the team to isolate and calibrate the archetype more effectively without causing any repercussions elsewhere. For example, if Kha'Zix, Talon, Rengar, Qiyana, Zed, and Shaco are simultaneously overperforming, chances are it's an issue with the assassin items being overpowered, not the individual champions. And so by powering down 1 and 2 of them, that should fix most of the issues. Conversely, AP assassins like Diana, Katarina, and Akali have to share most of their purchases with AP champions at large. And in trying to balance them via said items, you run the risk of collateral damage, the mage class being negatively affected. Plus, AP items can easily be abused by AP assassins on account of offering extremely valuable effects to those in question, like Zhonya's Hourglass Lichbane or Rabadon's Dead Cap. There's no Dead Cap for AD. Trying to balance items meant for 2 distinct classes can be a little bit more difficult than it looks. At the same time, designing specialized items for AP assassins can run the inverse hazard, where mages might be able to abuse them. If you're wondering why that works for physical champions but not magic ones, it's because marksmen have to build specifically towards crit and attack speed, while bruisers obviously need durability, so there's little to no risk of them abusing assassin items. Most of the time. Essentially, implementing a champion like Locke is risky since it could lead to a big problem with numbers, especially if aspects of his repertoire have the potential to spiral out of control. Fortunately, we don't have to worry too much about his passive. It seems that Riot is going the Yunaro approach, wherein his passive is a very straightforward one-liner, causing his attacks to deal magic damage on hit. Makes sense, he's an AP melee, gotta have some way to turn ability power into auto attack damage, and in this case it appears to be similar to like Mordekaiser's. Now, given it's auto attack based, that would give you the impression that he plays more like Diana or Gwen than Echo or Sylas, considering he has a passive dedicated towards auto attacking. By the way, the missing health increase caps at 30%, so against targets at a third of their health or less, you're doing the full damage. Now onto his Q, Ritual Nails. Locke throws a nail in a straight line that damages and marks all enemies hit, and he can throw 2 more casts right after the first one. Kind of like Neferi's Darkened Daggers, only you can do it 3 times instead of 2. The nails themselves do very little damage, practically negligible on their own, but what they do is supply a mark onto enemies, slowing them for a brief moment. Additionally, if Locke's able to basic attack them, he consumes the mark to deal bonus damage equal to the number of marks they had. For those who remember Akali's old Q, Mark of the Assassin, it's got a similar premise, only Ritual Nails can hit multiple enemies. Low key, the power creep is kind of insane. You compare these 2 abilities side by side, no one in their right mind would take old Akali Q over Locke's Q. You might have already taken notice of the absurd AP ratios on Locke's Q alone. If you're able to apply 3 nails onto a target and auto-attack them, while each individual one may not do a whole lot, the total damage his Q can potentially do in a single activation is nothing short of extraordinary, well over 1.5 times his total AP. However, do keep in mind that while it sounds impressive on paper, Evelynn has a similar idea with her Q where it does a lot of damage, but only if you can apply the initial dart, 3 auto-attacks, and her 3 spikes. All 7 instances of damage together amounts to the total possible DPS you can do. So in the case of Locke's Q, in order to actually deal that much damage, you have to land all 3 Qs, which have a narrower than average hitbox, and after you throw all 3 Qs, you have to then walk up and go for a basic attack. It goes without saying no sane opponent would just stand there letting that happen. If Locke's able to get all of this off, he more than deserves that kind of damage. I see no issue with this ability. I think it's kinda cool. W is where things get a bit funky. Soul Ignition. While active, he repeatedly loses HP, gaining bonus attack and movement speed for 2 seconds. During this time, any damage he takes is stored as Grey Health up to a cap, and at the end of the duration, or by recasting it, Locke restores all that Grey Health. It's practically identical to Dr. Mundo's Hard Zapper in regards to the health restoration. The purpose of Soul Ignition is to be a burst option, in that you play neutral and throw Qs at your target, then pop your W to go in for a quick trade, if not outright a kill. Understanding that you're inevitably gonna put yourself in danger to do this, the intent is to soften that blow, otherwise you'll explode just by trying to go in. AP assassins are usually given some measure of defense or sustain to make up for their inability to buy any compared to AD champs. Echo W, Diana W, Silas W, etc. Soul Ignition is that for Locke. I definitely get Rengar Battle Roar vibes from this move. If you time it correctly, you'll be able to heal virtually all the damage you took. But if hypothetically you get stunned or CC'd before then, you'll die before you can heal. This also presents a way for Locke to react against enemy attacks. For example, if he gets engaged on, he can pop W, heal from it, then quickly turn back around for a fight. Of course, no assassin is without mobility, and in Locke's case, he has a rendition of Echo's phase dive, Ashen Pursuit. It's a free target blink that damages all enemies at the arrival point. His next basic attack afterwards will cause him to dash toward his target to deal AoE damage. Said AoE damage can detonate the marks supplied by ritual nails, giving him a way to strike multiple targets at once. It's good to have, so you don't need to auto-attack one person at a time. That would really suck. By all accounts, this is Echo's phase dive with the dash and blink reversed, but the same basic principle. One notable distinction, however, is that Locke's E resets on takedown. Yep, there it is. It just wouldn't be a modern assassin without a reset mechanic on your main mobility tool. He can get in, do a bunch of damage, and then get right the hell out. Now, I'll accept it only on the basis that Locke has nothing else going for him. No stealth, no untargeted ability, nothing of the sort. You'll see him coming for you and thereby have a chance to react. Plus, unlike other assassins who rush you down instantly 100 to 0, Locke has to set up to assassinate you. Remember, he has to throw a couple Qs at you before going in for the kill, meaning there will always be a buffer window for you to react to him coming after you. If he dashes in early, he has to rack up a couple Qs before he can finish you off. Alternatively, if he throws a couple Qs at you, it serves as a warning for you to be on your guard for a possible follow-up. I'll begrudgingly admit, it's not a war crime for him to have a reset on his dash, although I don't think it should reset on every single takedown. He should only be able to reset it once. Otherwise, he can theoretically cast Ashen Pursuit 6 times in a single teamfight, and for the love of God, I would prefer it if we didn't have another Katarina. Finally, his ultimate, Purgatory. See, up until now, I saw no real issue with Locke. The fact that he has a pretty solid neutral game with this Q is sort of cancelled out by the ritual nails doing very little damage unless you actually go in for the auto. Everything else, his W and E, were pretty fair. Purgatory is where my praise ends. Locke damages all enemies in a circle and heavily souls them for 2 seconds. All enemy champions are then marked for 5 seconds, whereby if their health drops below a certain threshold, they get executed. Additionally, if Locke does manage to execute a champion, he can pick up an item that refunds a portion of his ultimate's cooldown and permanently raise the execute threshold of this ability. I don't like this skill, I really don't. It's basically Pyke's ultimate that trades the ability to reset for better consistency. Pyke's Death from Below is a blast of damage that executes all enemies below a certain threshold. Purgatory is the same exact thing, only compared to Death from Below, this move doesn't have to be the execute. You can use Purgatory, then continue attacking the target, and they can die later. One of the biggest ways to play around an execute is to heal or do anything you can to keep your HP above the danger zone right when the attack connects. Purgatory, though, can be used early for the slow and damage, and then it can still execute. In that sense, it's an AoE Urgot Sphere beyond death. I understand assassins are meant to be proficient at killing targets, and that this would be no different from an actual damaging nuke like Dinah's Moonfall or Echo's Chrono Break. But the reason I'm against Purgatory is precisely due to the fact that executes are meant to be tests of timing and reaction. Purgatory ignores all of that. Locke can open up a teamfight with his ultimate, then his teammates can do all the DPS and he can still proc out the execute just by having landed that ability. Furthermore, if a target is executed, the mark duration refreshes on all remaining enemies. So while it may not have a reset, it does have an extension. The entire point of an execute is to reward players who can successfully time the cast to deal the finishing blow. Purgatory, for all intents and purposes, is an AoE Elder Dragon execute essentially, giving you anywhere between 5 to 25 seconds to kill a target. And again, he doesn't even have to be the one doing the damage. Frustrating matters even more is that the execute threshold scales infinitely. In the mid to late game, he might be able to get Purgatory up to 20% or even 25%, at which point you now have an assassin with a frankly very easy to use Pike ultimate. The ironic thing is that when Pike first came out during beta testing, Death from Below had this exact property, permanently raising the execute threshold of his ultimate with every successful cast. They took it away after deeming it too unhealthy for the game. Now, given the history of Pike's attempts to be played as a mid laner, that Riot had to go to such lengths to make him not as powerful as a full-on champion should be more than enough indication that you should not give this to someone who's supposed to be a mid laner by default. This has the potential to escalate into a balanced nightmare. Locke's basic abilities are perfectly fine in my opinion. He has no hard crowd control, nor does he have any stealth or on-target ability. And for that matter, not counting his ultimate, he doesn't have any % health damage either. So in his defense, I actually have no qualms with this passive Q, W, and E. If anything, it might even appear underwhelming given how conditional they are and the amount of setup required to actually achieve the full damage. But all the same, the implications of Purgatory behaving the way that it does can be dangerous for the game, and might result in Locke suffering from one ability syndrome the way Mel does. I don't think it will be that bad, but my point is, there are clear lines in the sand you have to be very careful not to cross. Honestly, the biggest issue I take with Locke's ultimate is just that it's too easy to actually reach that execute threshold. It's got a very long cast range of 950, practically far enough to be a poke mage tool. And while it takes a second to activate, which is enough time for most people to dash, flash Azanias, the radius is pretty big. Pike's ultimate literally had to be made in the shape of an X to make it harder to land on a free moving enemy. Comparatively, this attack is easier to land. Much easier. This could be a hot take, but I don't think Purgatory should be designed in the fashion of an Urgot ultimate. It should be the ability itself that has to do the execution, so you use it to finish off your rotation, not to start it. 5 seconds is a really long time to be marked for death, let alone getting extended by one of your teammates dying. Take your average team fight, usually the most impact happens within 10 seconds or so. Locke can feasibly start a team fight with Purgatory and execute people with it later on. For him to have this immediately at level 6 doesn't sound very healthy. Some people might try to retort by saying Smolder has an even easier execute ability and it's on his Q. True, but Smolder doesn't get that until 25 minutes into the game at the earliest. They might try to say Asol's Singularity has an execute threshold as well, but even then it's positionally dependent. Enemies have to be within the epicenter and be low HP for the execute to go off, meaning if they dash out of it, they're fine. That, and realistically, no one worries about the execute until 30 minutes into the game when the black hole's actually big enough and he has enough stardust to make it execute at a reasonable level. Also, Asol's not an assassin. You engage on him, he disintegrates. I might just be making a bigger deal out of this than it needs to be, but I thought we learned from Pike about the dangers of giving a hypermobile assassin an execute, much less an infinitely stacking one. For what it's worth though, that's my only gripe with the champion. I think the whole Needles idea is pretty cool, and I'm glad he doesn't have either stealth or target ability, cause that would be really overpowered. Candidly, it's that specific thing or lack thereof that makes me think he'll be fine in the grand scheme of things. Everything Locke does is for the most part honest. I know the words honest and assassin are like oil and water, but if you think about it, he needs to play really carefully if he wants to kill you. His abilities give you plenty of warning on when you need to avoid something or get ready. Ritual Nails obviously requires a really good aim to land all 3 of them. Granted, each one slows, making it easier to hit the other ones, but once you're tagged by 2 or 3, that's your cue to anticipate Locke's eventual approach with E or W. Soul Ignition, like with any other heal, can be easily shut down by either bursting him or getting anti-heal, and without any hard CC or the aforementioned defensive utility you'd expect on other assassins, Locke seems pretty easy to deal with overall. If I were to look at his entire kin holistically, sure, he's nowhere near as offensive as Gwen, Silas, and the like. But I still think moves like Purgatory are a slippery slope that Riot shouldn't even bother going down. That being said, I'm glad he doesn't have % health damage. When I heard he was in the same line of work as a legendary Shauna Vayne, I was like, oh god, is he gonna do % max health AP true damage? That's no, you shouldn't do that. But what do you guys think? Do you find Locke to be overloaded, or do you think he's perfectly acceptable? Let me know in the comments down below. That'll be all for today, so if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you could leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other champion first impressions videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.